I'm at 13% Julia.
You said you were on 4 on Penny's phone?
No. Honestly, I was like, if my alarm doesn't wake me up.
I don't think you are.
That word.
That's unfortunate.
Where's the correction thing like?
That's very rare. No, we needed it. We needed it.
Revise
Do
my
we?
lyrics. No.
I don't like them. It's wasting my time.
Oh, look at her on the treadmill.
Brandon, what are you showing him?
This
A
girl
girl
that
running on
runs
a treadmill.
100 meters in 11 seconds. Yeah.
Good way to die.
Treadmill that's going that fast.
You made one wrong step. That's right.
You're
Oh, I didn't get
throw you
photos.
across the room.
Okay, good.
All right, here we go. Ionic compounds. We got some definitions today of what we're going to be talking about over the next multiple weeks.
Oh, my.
Memorize.
Ionic compounds are an electrostatic attraction between one cation and one anion. Now, electrostatic attraction is a fancy word for positive and negatives attract. Okay? So what your elementary teacher taught you about positive and negatives attracting, that's an electrostatic attraction. If you have an electrostatic attraction between a cation and an anion, then you have an ionic compound. These are often referred to as salts. Outside of chemistry class, salt is table salt, right? But to a chemist, that's just one of thousands and thousands of types of salts. So when we say salt in here, we mean ionic compound. When you say salt at lunch, you mean sodium chloride. If we mean sodium chloride in here, we're going to say table salt specifically. Okay. All right, what is a cation, by the way? Positive, right? A stable positive ion. And an anion is a what? It's a negative, okay? All right, now, since we know that metals lose electrons to make cations and nonmetals gain electrons to make anions, right? We know that, okay? Then a metal bonded to a nonmetal will be an ionic compound. So ionic compounds are going to be metals bonded to nonmetals, or sometimes the cation or anion is a polyatomic ion, and we'll define that in a minute. They're taking percussion. Look at my next door.
I thought that's an English class.
No,
Choir and different.
it's focus class.
I get they do percussion in the other building.
When the music teacher teaches focus, the focus people learn music.
That's kind of nice though.
That's one of my focus class. We just play cards. We had Garrett
I thought you had Miss Garrett. Didn't you guys have to write essays?
in the beginning, but then she kind of got sick.
My
and
brother had to
she
write
got out
an
to the left
essay
the
the
half
other
year.
day for topic.
I had Coach Skinner.
He gets it from me. I love that. I didn't have focus ever.
Covalent compounds. Covalent compounds are when the electrons are shared between nonmetals. So right-hand side of the periodic table, right? Those elements make covalent compounds. If you bond something on the left to something on the right, you get an ionic compound. Two things on the right is covalent. More specifically, binary covalent compounds are something that we will deal with in the next few days. And those are covalent compounds that have just two nonmetals. You can have 3 or 4 or 10, but a binary covalent compound just has two. An example would be water, hydrogen, oxygen, 2 nonmetals. Organic compounds are covalent compounds that contain at least carbon and hydrogen, which implies that they might have something else in them. Oxygen is very common, so it's nitrogen, sometimes sulfur, sometimes phosphorus, sometimes halogens, sometimes other things. But carbon and hydrogen are the minimum that you have to have classified as organic, but oxygen is also very common. Acid, kind of hard to get a simple definition of an acid. Acids can be kind of complicated. But hydrogen bonded to a group 16 or 17 nonmetal, there are exceptions to that, probably. I know there are. Or bonded to a polyatomic ion. Okay, that's twice we've mentioned a polyatomic ion, so what the heck is that? A covalent compound with a positive or negative charge. So those are just some definitions we need to know. What we're going to get into over the next 2 units is names, formulas, and structures of these things, and properties of these things too. Okay, so we start the first unit. The next test, which is the Thursday before fall break, is what we call nomenclatures, names and formulas. Right? We mostly concentrate on writing the formulas. That's the most practical thing that you have to do. If you're given a name for something, can you write its correct formula? And there's different processes or systems for that, depending on what type of substance you're dealing with. So there's a way to write the formula of an ionic compound. There's a way to do it for a binary covalent. There's ways to do it for organics. There's ways that it's done for acids. And then there come the polyatomics. And the only way to do those are to memorize them. Everybody hates that, but it's just too bad. So let's look at them. If you look at slide 108, in your slideshow, you'll see a link to this document right here. Okay, and it shows a bunch of common ions. This is nowhere near an exhaustive list. These are just common ions. Most of them we've discussed. Like here's the first column metals and second column metals. There's aluminum and silver and zinc. We talked about how that's going to be a 1, a 2, and 3. Okay. Here's just a sampling of some of the D and P block metals that make multiple ions. Okay, we discussed that. Here's non-metals. There's the 17th group, 16th, 15th. They're -1s, -2, -3. What we got to be concerned with here today is this list right here. There's 26 of them, I think, in this list. And we want to put ammonium on that list right here. And these are polyatomic ions. They're all negative. They're all anions except for ammonium. It's a cation. But these are called the polyatomic ions. They're covalently bonded molecules that have an excess of electrons or are missing some electrons in the case of ammonia. But the negative ones have excess electrons. So we have to know these. Okay? So you have a quiz next Friday where I will give you 25 names and you're going to give me 25 formulas. Okay? Highly recommend flashcards. Okay? Let's talk just a second here about how we write this stuff. Because we always have confusion on this, and people always get the numbers and signs in the wrong place. And let me just go ahead and tell you, these things have to be written exactly correct, or they're exactly wrong. There's no partial credit for doing this, okay? You have to write the correct formula, okay? All right, now, y'all remember the...
Are they like banging this?
It's like drums.
It sounds like
a long way to go.
But it sounds like they're doing like.
it sounds like they're having like a jackhammer in there.
So, y'all remember the paper that your kindergarten teacher had you write on? Two big lines and a little dash line in the middle, right? Okay. So, here's what we have to do. For example, nitrite. Okay. We say this NO2 minus. Okay. But what we have is a subscripted 2 and a superscripted minus sign. okay? And we have two capital letters, that's important. So it's capital N, capital O. And then a subscript is something that's written smaller and halfway below the line. That line that your kindergarten teacher said you should never write below, okay, unless you were doing some kind of lowercase g or whatever, right? Okay, it goes right there. And then the negative sign goes smaller and superscripted, which means it goes up here, okay? Another example would be sulfate, SO4 2 minus. Capital S, capital O. The 4 is down here, subscripted, and the 2 negative is superscripted. Okay? So these numbers can't be out of place, they can't be different, they can't be one switched out, any of that, the whole things. Okay. This means we have a nitrogen, 2 oxygens, and an extra electron. That's what that means. This means we have a sulfur, 4 oxygens, 2 extra electrons. 1 sulfur, 4 oxygens, 2 additional electrons. Okay. You got that?
So, like, in instance with the, or just the one above, is the 2 like directly above the 4, or is it supposed to be slightly over?
It's probably should be slightly over. It, that part won't matter too much. But it, like if you're typing it, if you're writing it, they could pretty much be right on top of each other. Probably supposed to be. But if you're typing it, I don't know. You can't really make it do that. Like, I don't know if a word processor. So it doesn't really matter either way.
So like, if it's like the 2 on nitrate, like the first nitrate, if the 2 isn't below the line, are you gonna take off?
Yeah.
So like, it has to be like
It's got to be down.
split.
It's got to be down.
So it can't be on top of the line, but really small.
That means something else.
What?
That might mean something else.
If it's on top of the line, but really small. So it like half of the 2 has to be above the line and below the line.
It's got to be below the line.
Not the whole thing though, because that might mean
It's
something.
got
else.
to be below the. It's got to be below the letter. At least a little bit below the letter.
But not the whole thing though, because if the whole thing's below the letter, then that might.
The whole thing wouldn't be as bad as none of it. If you don't put any of it below the line, then it's potentially later on down the road to be confused with another number. This is all building up to stuff between now and Christmas. We're just fixing
Alright,
to
so, like,
start
what if I
building
look-
and building and building,
The bottom line on the number
building
2,
a
right?
foundation. This is learning our alphabet so that we can learn to write sentences. But
The number 2,
the number
the,
2
the bottom part of the number 2. That
doesn't
line
need
right
to
there.
be on that line.
Correct, but what if it's in the middle of it, like overlapped?
Like that.
No, like
Why can't you just write it on?
like this is overlaps into this.
Probably do.
Okay, good.
But
Now on our quiz, will we have lines like that?
No.
Sad.
I remember you produced it behind me.
All right, so next Friday, quiz, 25 of these. I give you the names, you give me the formulas. All right. Then what we're gonna do over the next couple of weeks is we're gonna learn how to do all this, what we call nomenclature, okay? Your test, we'll have a couple of more quizzes the next week. Your test is Thursday before we get out for fall break, and it's 50, maybe? Just random names of stuff, and you give me the formulas.
Oh,
It's gonna be on this.
9 weeks?
That's part of
Is
it.
it gonna be on this 9 weeks? So like, I still have time to bring up my grade.
You have one more chance.
So,
One more chance.
so that test will pretty much be that entire page, so you know how you zoom down.
No.
there's a whole bunch of stuff.
No.
No.
So much more than that.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the bonus is gonna be worth for like a total of 30 points.
No, but
But there will be a bonus.
there will be a bonus.
gonna be counted as 20 points.
20. I think 20 is fair. Like,
Yeah.
make a 120.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Exactly.
okay. Like, you gotta be for the people sometimes. That's the
Right.
important.
All right, let's take a vote, y'all. Do you want the bonus points to be 20? Or is it?
It just has a communist undertone.
People have decided.
Like, we the people, like we the people. Oh, I got one. We the people of your chemistry class vote that the bonus question should be
The popular
bonus
vote
question
wins.
should equal up to 20.
Well, this is the point where I resist your democratization.
So then we
I
can
say we overthrow this government.
Yeah, we
Yeah, we
could.
can
You're
rid
welcome
of-
to try. You're welcome to try. You can find you a George Washington and y'all can gather up your little army and see if y'all pull this
Hey,
off.
I know a guy.
I
Yeah, I
also
know a
know
bunch
that.
of guys, so.
I know some Georges.
We'll get Mr. Skinner in his
If
musket
y'all
on,
want some George violence,
right?
if you ever
I was a
resort
white
to
man, powdered
violence,
wig.
Mr.
I'm
Skinner
not
would come
opposed to it.
with us in his musket.
So-
No.
There's just somebody probably has an
Y'all
outfit.
can try to open.
He has a musket that we could
We're
use.
gonna get
Oh my
Miss
God,
Hollis
it's
works
worth
the
it.
Hey,
third
this is
tale.
more
He's
authoritarian.
leading us into battle.
I should be marching down the hallway.
Yeah.
With his mustard.
Yeah.
Mr. Skinner.
I feel like we have extra stuff too. I see them up in here.
They're talking about doing a Civil War reading.
Yeah, do you
I
know?
mean, I know of it, but we haven't really. I wouldn't think
You guys should talk more.
Oh my gosh, I'll be besties.
Yeah.
I don't think y'all would like click, but y'all should talk.
It'll be an interesting conversation.
What do we need to talk?
You can just talk about history.
Talk about communism.
Get him going on communism. You'll be there for.
Or like say like a very like hot take, like a super hot take about like history or anything like political. Like
He will sit there and talk with you for an hour.
Maybe he likes Joe Rogan.
get the feathers
Ask
running.
him about Hitler. Ask him about Hitler.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it.
We'll talk about him.
I'll talk about it.
Okay.
Why he's the greatest leader of all time.
Oh, okay.
That's like the fifth time rated.
Greatest is a positive connotation.
You know,
What do you?
Layton, aren't you judging?
Is the camera still recording us while I'm talking about this?
German?
oh, I really hope not.